Hi, I'm Vanessa Moss, and I'm here from the Future of Meetings, or TFOM, to tell you about how we can go beyond video calls for more effective interaction, along with other members of the TFOM community. So to start, we wanted to reflect a little bit on TFOM. Where did we come from, why are we here, and what's our role in terms of advocating for better online meetings? So to start with, in terms of the original motivation for TFOM, back in early 2020, this was very much in the mind of a lot of Australians. A lot of the country was on fire, and we were really kind of living the experience of what climate change is going to look like over the next decades, and thinking carefully about, is this the future we want to live in, and what are the ways in which we can do better in terms of better sustainability in our practices. And this was also linking in with Astronomers for Planet Earth. And so, thinking about this in the global context, beyond astronomy, beyond academia, in bigger society, there's a lot of travel that goes on. And so the question that we were asking is this old normal the right normal? Is this what we want to get back to? Or are there other ways we can adapt our practices and collaborate differently? Alongside this, thinking about, in terms of everything we do in society, there's the Sustainable Development Goals that were put forward by the United Nations about the things we should be aiming for when we launch new initiatives or improve our practices. We should be trying to reduce inequality and look for more sustainable practices. And so this was a key motivator as well to think about. And so some of the other questions linked in with this, so if the future of meetings makes more use of technology and goes online, what happens when you're not in the room? What happens in these hybrid cases? Are we really including people in the best way? Are they getting the same kind of experience, or are we designing them out of the equation? And linked to that is, if we do use online technologies and we try to meet with people, can we start to reproduce the same kinds of interactions that we seek when we're in person? Can we be together with people in a natural, organic way? And can we form new collaborations and relationships with people all around the world using the same kinds of technologies? And so the Future of Meetings was really about bringing these different groups together across academia and industry and broader society, and thinking about what we wanted the future of meetings to look like today, tomorrow, and well into the future. And so bringing together all of that experience and learning to try and figure out what the best path forward was. So TFOM was always about a lot of this evaluation and recommendations. We put a lot of work into looking at all the things we learned in running TFOM and putting it together ourselves, but also the contributions from speakers, workshops, and discussions that took place during the symposium. One of the key outcomes was this acronym that you can see behind me, DISERV, which is a summary of the different kind of key points we felt were important that people could think of when they were designing their future meetings, regardless of whether they were in person, hybrid, or online. And so you can find out a lot of information in some of the links that you see here. We've always been very focused in TFOM about in evaluating what we did and trying to share that with the broader community. And so after TFOM, we found there was a need to sort of continue on as an active community, to evolve from what was an organizing committee that was very passionate about trying to improve things into a sustained collaboration of people around the world who are really dedicated to trying to both pioneer new approaches and determine what best practice looks like, as well as work with people in order to improve their own meetings, collaborations, workshops, wherever we can. And so that's where we're at today, and we're still very active. And really interested also to, benefit from the knowledge of other communities as we try to go forward. So a couple of quick things to show based on some of the things we've done over time. This is a result from SIGGRAPH Birds of a Feather that we were involved with. We ran one focused on the future of meetings and connecting to mixed reality or extended reality, XR. And so we asked this professional community, when do you see XR stopping being a gimmick, something that people think is just around the corner, to being actually truly useful to the ways we work and socialize and interact with people? And so for the majority of people, this was quite a near-term thing. Somewhere around the couple of years to 5-year mark was the bulk of the population. And so what we see with TFOM is that mixed reality is really going to change everything and really improve some of that gap between in-person and online interaction that we're seeing right now. And we're going to cover that a lot in this talk as well. The other thing we asked was about, would you have been at SIGGRAPH if it were in person? Obviously, there's a COVID lens mixed in with this, but the bulk of the people wouldn't have been. So when we think about our meetings and interactions going forward, we really have, if we want to be a truly diverse and inclusive community, we really need to understand that most people can't be there in person. So how do we include them in an effective way? And the last kind of plot to show from some of the things we've done in TFOM is looking at the distribution of the kinds of people who can attend in-person conferences and meetings versus an example for an online conference. We don't have a lot of data yet on the online. Hopefully that'll grow over the next few years. But what we really see with in-person is that with x-axis being Human Development Index, which is kind of a measure of the wealth and development of a country, and the y-axis being number of people normalized by population, in a normal in-person conference, there's a very strong correlation between the number of people and how wealthy or how developed the country is. When we go online, we start to remove some of that correlation. We start to make knowledge, information, and interaction accessible to people more distributed around the world. And so for us in TFOM, this is a really important part, not just of, why we need to seek more effective online approaches, but why we actually should be seeking online practices as being part of our standard. This is the way we should work going forward and really only use in-person for where it's needed. But we're going to explore a little bit more of some of the challenges with this, as well as what are some of the practical ways you can adapt.
What are the barriers? When people ask me what I think is the biggest challenge of online meetings, I have to say attitude. Sure, there are other things like technology and reliable internet, time zones, and the physicality of being there, but people seem to forget that travel and jet lag are far more disruptive than the occasional inconvenient meeting. Or, oh, it's so easy to be distracted in online meetings. Hello? Have you never sat in on an in-person meeting and everyone's playing with their phone? People point out the negatives, overlooking the positives, and forgetting that some of the complaints are actually applicable to in-person meetings as well. And it is this attitude and fixation on the in-person conference, often at the expense of the virtual audience, especially in the hybrid format, that leads to a poor online experience that is really hard to recover from. More often than not, most of the budget and planning effort go into the in-person experience, with allowance made to those online through live stream, which always reminds me of children pressing their faces against the windows of a sweet shop. And a lot of the times you don't even know they're there, and rarely do the two audiences get a chance to engage with each other. At question time, attention is given to the in-person audience. Timetabling is based on the in-person agenda, which exacerbates the time zone problem. But online meetings don't need to replicate in-person meetings. To make the most of the online format, you have to think differently, and that is what TFOM does, starting with digital first. Don't try and make your online meeting mimic an in-person experience. Use the strengths of both formats, which is exactly what the R in DICERV is about. Use the right tool for the job. Nothing beats in-person for sharing meals, and I defy an in-person conference to get as diverse and global an audience in the one room as you can get online. Now, there are lots of alternative and creative ways we can improve on our meetings today. Not all deals have to be made on the golf course.
So how can we improve meetings today? A traditional conference usually consists of several days of talks to a live audience. But is this format best when the meeting goes online?
Yeah, and that's a good question. When we look back historically, we could also ask the same thing of if this meeting format the best for anything, because it really traditional conferences, long days, week long, that sort of evolved in a very different time when technology wasn't available to help people meet more effectively and collaborate. One of the key points here is really thinking about how can asynchronous collaboration be used? How can you reduce some of the fatigue of meeting for long hours online by moving away from some of the passive content, things like recordings or posters or things that people can do for the live meeting, and really just focus that live format on interaction and discussion and things that benefit from people engaging. And that can help a lot with things like time zones as well, when you have a very global audience that's distributed.
So what about platforms? When conferences had to go online very suddenly in 2020, we tended to default to Zoom and YouTube, yet many people found these both ineffective and draining. Are there situations when those tools are the best, but also ones perhaps when others might be preferable?
Yeah, the biggest problem, I mean, Zoom and YouTube and video calls and all of that, they actually are very useful. When used well, they can be super effective ways of meeting or distributing information. But the problem right now is that they're really, the hammer that everyone is building their houses with. So it creates a lot of repetition and it's not leading to new experiences. And so I think that's where thinking very carefully about what is the right tool for the format and the approach that's trying to be achieved, and adopting things like video calls or spatial platforms like Gather when it makes sense to, looking also to things like virtual reality, like we're doing now, when you want things more like body language and more natural interaction, or you want to take someone to a place and give that spatial memory. So it's really about stepping back, thinking carefully, what is the purpose of the meeting? What are we trying to get out of it? What's the right platform and what's the right approach to design that meeting?
Okay, you've designed your online meeting, you've taken advantage of asynchronous content and different platforms for interactions and networking. What now are your top tips for ensuring this all runs smoothly?
We've definitely seen the advantages of testing and checking things, doing that well in advance. That gives you some time to react to anything that needs to change. Making sure that everyone involved is engaged on the same page. So, making sure speakers understand what's expected of them, that they're, on board with everything that's needed to prepare, and just, bringing everyone along for the ride has been really important as well. We found yeah, I think like also just learning from experiences of others. This is sort of a place where we are empirically finding our way to what best practice looks like for online and hybrid meetings. And so it's okay sometimes to get things wrong as long as you learn from it. So constantly be evaluating what the approach is, what worked, what didn't, and sharing that with others.
Now, of course, there are cases where you do actually want that in person meeting, but you still do not want to exclude the attendees who would find it easier to join online. So, how do those tips change if you have a hybrid audience?
Yeah, we're really seeing hybrid kind of like fill a gap, right? At the moment, I feel like as a community, as a society, we are underutilizing the benefits of online. We could be doing so much more with online, but we are seeing some reduction in person as people shift more towards hybrid to try and be more inclusive. One of the key things we've always found, I guess, in TFOM is that making sure hybrid is, the online audience is not secondary. You're not just designing an in-person conference and adding the online as the fly on the wall who, wish you were here, but you couldn't be for all those reasons. And sorry, but we're going to focus on the in-person. So really thinking carefully about the experiences of both the digital and the in-person attendees, trying to bridge the gap actively, making sure they both have the autonomy to participate, to ask questions, to engage with each other, and also having like an advocate in-person room that's really just focused on the digital audience and their experience. So even and in-person people attending online at the same time. So that can really help with trying to make hybrid better for everyone. But as we've also seen, hybrid really has to be, for most cases, the minimum effort we put in if we really care about being inclusive and accessible going forward.
One of the problems with in-person presentations is that we are normally restricted to 2D slides. This can be a challenge for our 3D world. For example, when trying to describe the design of a spacecraft, I can show a couple of different angles, but inevitably I'm not going to have the right view for everything I want. This is one area where virtual platforms can have a big difference. I can use a 3D model that can not only be manipulated and scaled to highlight any feature, but also handled by audience members for a much more informative presentation.
While Digital First will help you get the best for your online or hybrid meeting by ensuring that all participants have equal access, by far the most common feedback we receive is that even the best of online meetings fall down in two major ways. The organic many-to-many interactions, such as networking events and hallway conversations, and that sense of human connection, feeling like you've really met someone. Current-gen virtual reality actually helps solve many of these issues. From a sustainability perspective, we need to massively reduce our emissions immediately, and virtual reality has the potential to reduce the need for travel. Typically, if you are flying for a conference or a meeting in person, current-gen virtual reality and even traditional online meeting methods will have on the order of 2 to 3 orders of magnitude less emissions per person. So as a no-travel meeting method, current virtual reality is vastly better for emissions than in-person events, and as we will discuss later, it is also a big improvement on video calls in certain contexts. In addition to this, VR is now quite cheap. A single headset can range from a few $100 to a few $1,000, but it no longer requires an expensive PC to run. These costs are still considerable, of course, but they pale in comparison to the costs we usually associate with flights and accommodation for travel, especially since headsets, unlike flights, can be reused and even shared. As an online meeting platform and supported by accessibility grants, virtual reality can be made accessible to many people who would normally be excluded from in-person events, say due to limited mobility or visa issues, and it is often backwards compatible with most smartphones and laptops. It also has some very interesting applications for mitigating the impact of our unconscious biases, as our appearance and audio in virtual reality does not need to perfectly match reality. So what really makes virtual reality better than video calls? Well, firstly, the spatial audio in VR, which has realistic distance, direction, and occlusion properties, check out the links shown for some examples, is fantastic for solving those common complaints about organic interaction and human connection in online meetings. Spatial audio allows the exact same multi-conversation attention switching that we use in real life. You can overhear an interesting topic the next table over, or hear an old friend from across the room, all while still keeping track of your current conversation. In addition, that spatial audio really helps get in the right vibe for an online conference or event. Walking into a VR event, you get the same hubbub and noise as a large in-person event, which is not something to be dismissed lightly. At in-person meetings, we read a lot about the state of a multi-person conversation, from how people are standing, how they gesture, the way they tilt a head or wave a hand, and even just who people are looking at. Even with just 3 points of tracking, a camera and my hands, this carries over very well into virtual reality. For now, this expressiveness of the body in VR does come with a trade-off. As you can see, I have pretty limited facial expressions. But this is changing. There are now numerous eye and face tracking add-ons or built-in sensors which, while rudimentary, do allow for real-time facial emotions to come through. In the not-too-distant future, however, higher quality versions of these systems will combine with photorealistic avatars to bring all of the benefits of both body language and facial expression to virtual reality. Finally, when using virtual reality, you are by definition cohabiting and co-editing shared persistent spaces together with your colleagues. Whether you need to put up posters, share screens, show off 3D objects, or draw naturally on a whiteboard, or even in space. You can leave a note for a colleague or bring people with you on a trip to a new VR experience. It's all done together. And this goes a long way to making you feel like you are with someone, and it provides that all-important human connection that we miss in calls. At TFOM, we've spent the last few years using virtual reality to enhance academic events. We started with our own events in 2021, which were a great success, and in early 2022 we did our first big external collaboration, running a symbiotic virtual event alongside the Infrared 2022 conference. All the content from the conference was made available inside a shared virtual reality environment. This included on-demand pre-recorded talks, posters and poster videos, live presentations, live video calls, social sessions, and we even had an exhibit hall that had its own interactable movies and 3D scans of real space missions. All of these were explorable by yourself or together with other attendees. Throughout 2022, we've also been running a series of semi-public academic events on the theme of science for public good. These have been run in AltSpace with invited speakers giving live or pre-recorded talks, panel discussions and open discussion sessions, and these were all streamed live to YouTube, with Slack being shared back into the world for everyone to ask questions via. These, in our opinion, are where virtual reality shines best, with academic content delivery followed by post-event organic networking and social without the need to switch platforms, and with all the best aspects of both in-person and online meetings combined. But VR can be so much more than just academic events. There are already many rich shared virtual reality worlds out there, and whether it's just to spend some time together, visit museums, check out art galleries, play games, learn a new skill, or even hike some amazing nature treks, the incentives these things provide us to meet and experience new things together, whether they're virtual or not, is an incredible icebreaker and team-building exercise, which we really should explore for use as conference activities in online academic events. So what might the future hold? The use cases in astronomy and beyond for photorealistic, highly expressive avatars interacting in high-quality meeting spaces are already vast. But if we couple this with real-time digital twins of our offices, our telescopes, and even our data, and we will see endless leaps forward in the quality of our remote interactions. And this will lead to new scientific breakthroughs, wider dissemination of our research, and a substantial improvement in our treatment of both the environment and each other. As astronomers, we have a rather unique place as members of our truly worldwide research field. United by shared skies and international facilities, astronomy transcends borders and cultures in ways that just aren't that common in many academic or industry fields. And this means that we are uniquely placed to fight for better ways of doing things. So whether you are here to push for our institutes to adopt more climate-friendly stances, or are here fighting for a worldwide reduction in single-use plastics, perhaps campaigning for more equitable treatment of all, or simply want something that you can do personally to improve our future world and our time in it, I urge you to consider using VR for your work. Not just because it will help achieve all of those things, but because I hope that by embracing these strange new digital worlds, we might just get to keep our real one.
So where does this leave us? These are some of the discussion questions we might need to think about.
So what has been your most positive experience online or hybrid over the past few years?
Have you seen any progressive policies instated by your institute or others to improve online adoption?
What do you feel is the best next step for us to truly change practices in astronomy and beyond?
And what will be the tipping point that sees you convinced of mixed reality headsets as a useful personal device?
We look forward to seeing you at the discussion session.